Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back. My name is Crystal Turner. I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner who has gone holistic because I know to be whole is to be healed. And today, as I'm recording this video, it is November 9th, 2024 in the US of A. And it's been a very heated week in this country because we have recently just had a presidential election. A lot of people are, feeling a lot of different ways about the way that this election went and are having a lot of different emotions because of the way this election went. And it was baffling and startling to a lot of people. And I really want this video to be about reflecting on this. At the start of this whole dynamic that is beginning now, I want people to understand the three things that oppressive systems will do in order to keep a level of control. And I think it's important because when we think about being under certain systems, it can be interesting. Because one thing I know when it comes to systems, at least this particular system that I'm talking about right now, is there is a psychology that is behind how these systems operate. Because when you look at systems, usually the people who are running a system are far and few as compared to the masses that system is over. So in order to be able to control masses, if there's control happening, there has to be something more than a person or a system using their physical self to do that. There is definitely first this impact on the mind and our psychology. And so I want to talk about these three ways and these three tactics that systems use that really do keep many people oppressed. In order for there to be an oppressor, there have to be people who are being oppressed, who are going along with what the oppressor or oppressive system is dishing out. And this isn't to point fingers to the person who's being oppressed or point blame. This video is really about just understanding how those systems work so you can have an awareness, and also so that we can be empowered to know better, because oftentimes these ways of being are repeated over and over again, in different generations and sometimes even in the same generation, but just in different ways. So it's the same thing being shown in different ways. So 3 ways to see how these tactics are being used. And the first one is through fear. Fear is definitely something that an oppressor or an abuser uses to keep control. And I'm thinking about this in terms of systems, systematically. But we could also take this down to an individual. So think about an individual who's being abused. One of the ways that the abuser manipulates the person they're abusing is through causing some form of fear. If it's a young person, they put this fear that they'll get in trouble or imagine what will happen to you if you tell what's going on. It's the first mechanism of control to put the thought of worst case scenarios or fear into our mind that will cause us to not move. So that's one of the things that fear will do. It'll cause us to be stifled. It'll cause us to be paralyzed in what we should do. What do we do? And it'll also cause some levels of division, which I'll talk about more later. But it will definitely cause you to be paralyzed in movement and not make decisions. It will cause you to have anger. And, anger is an emotion that we all have, right? But how we use the anger, how we channel the anger is what gets distorted when we are when we're being controlled by oppressive systems. And so that anger can look like lashing out on one another instead of using that energy toward the actual system itself. And also understanding that the way you can use that anger and channel that is not always physically going toward to attack this oppressor, which when we think about that right now, you wouldn't know necessarily one person to point to as the oppressor. If you're looking at the president, you're being hazed. Your vision is hazy because we have to know that the president does not have the ultimate power in this country. There are those behind the president. The president is the puppeteer or the puppet who is doing what the system wants it to do. So oftentimes in a system, we don't see specifically who the oppressor is. So this idea of going physically after the oppressor is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about using that anger to channel something from within yourself in terms of how in yourself you're going to develop and rise so that the ways that you're now moving in the system are for the betterment of the people being oppressed. And I think that is even a better way of doing things, because when we're at the top of the mountain shouting out what it is we're going to do, then the oppressor is taking notes and saying, okay, this is what they're going to do, so this is what we're going to do to combat that. But when you move quietly within yourself and your family and your communities, I think that's where more power builds anyway. It's from the bottom up as opposed to from the top and then being trickled down to us. When we're talking about us being in this system, right? So using our anger and channeling it in a way to understand, how am I going to be in this society that I live in? What am I going to offer that's of good if I know I'm in a system that's bringing about something else? Because if we're only using the anger to be on social media platforms arguing at each other, I think this is something that the system recognizes. If we're just only taking this energy, this vital energy that gets used to just go on Facebook and have opposing opinions, arguing, falling out with people, and then going to sleep and sometimes actually feeling like we've done something, it's such an illusion. You haven't done anything, and just arguing and using your anger to curse somebody out, using your anger to put someone down, it's a waste of our energy. And right now, we have to use the energy of anger, energy of love, and channel it in ways to bring more of what you would like to see in this world to come into this world. But again, when oppressor is using fear, when we use anger in a way to go against each other or to just waste energy in arguing, which tires us out emotionally, and it takes away from our vision to be able to see what we want, then the system wins. Now, the second way that oppressive systems use to control people is giving the feeling of hopelessness. And hopelessness is one of those things that a people or a person will feel after they feel they've done all that they can do. And this is in this situation that we're talking about right now, but it applies into so many different aspects of life. You can apply it in anything. But in this situation, it's putting all this energy into getting a president or vice president Kamala into office. And now that hasn't happened, and all this energy was spent. People are exhausted emotionally and physically and do not know what to do, so they feel hopeless. And one thing that an abuser or an oppressor can do when you're feeling hopeless, even though they're the one that created this system that puts people in this space of feeling hopelessness, is they can then provide an illusion of a solution. They'll provide things by way of other people, to give this idea of a solution, which is unfortunate because the solution that they're given isn't a real solution to really help people. It is really, at the end of it all, the solution is precipitating what the outcome is that the oppressor wanted in the first place. But when you're in a space of hopelessness, you might feel depressed, you might feel defeated, you just might not feel like trying anymore, you might feel like giving up. But when it comes to understanding the energy that we spend, this can be an opportunity to give yourself a moment to rest, right? But to use your energy in a way to develop yourself. Because how many of us know truly that the most powerful person isn't the president? Even in this system, typically the president is doing what the system is allowing it to do. So it's not going to be in our most abundant power to be able to have a president in office. Our first power is within ourselves. The power within us, to cultivate within us, so that each of us as individuals, can you imagine how much better this world would be if each of us as individuals went within ourselves and did what it was we needed to do to produce a better version of ourselves to then offer to this society? Do you know how much better this society would be? How much power that would even put in the society. So starting with ourselves, that's because that's where we have the most power and control. It's how we decide to develop and cultivate ourselves. And then we impact our family with that. And then we bring that out into our community. The people that we're connected with, the people then that shifts who we're connected with. When we do this work with ourselves and we find the answers for ourselves, and that keeps us from looking for a system to give us these answers that are really the answer for their propaganda, which is really the answer for their vision. It's not the answer for our own vision for ourselves. So that piece of hopelessness is dangerous because it can cause us to give up, and allow somebody else to take the wheel and start making decisions. And when we're talking about systems, we don't want these systems to make the decisions. We've been in this system long enough, I think, for many of us, if you think about it, how much has the system really helped you to have the best experience of life you could have? It has to start within ourselves and really thinking about, why am I here? Why did I come here? What is my purpose in this life? And to start really letting fear push that to the side so that you can start expressing who you are through love in this world and offering it to the world. You doing that is going to take the hopelessness out of some people and have them to start being inspired again. It'll inspire them to do the same. But first, by doing this for yourself, you get inspired and you move away from hopelessness. You remember why you are here, or you discover why you are here, which takes us back to remembering why you are here, because the purpose started before we came here. So just recognize hopelessness is one of those very thought out tools that oppressors use to control masses of people. Finally, the last way that I want to mention that oppressive systems use to control you is through division, through people dividing them. The term divide and conquer. When people are divided, then they can conquer the person who is, or the system that has a separate agenda. If they can separate the people who are really in the same boat, if they could separate them and divide them, then it's easier to conquer, So it's it's something that repeats itself over and over again. If you really think historically about that, if you even think recently in the challenges that we've dealt with in these past 5 years, I remember I was at a grocery store when the pandemic at first started. There were no vaccines. There was nothing. There were no solutions. There was not even a way to diagnose or to test for this COVID illness or virus. And I remember I was in the grocery store and there was a younger woman, probably in her 20s. And there was an older man who looked like he was in his 70s. And they were in line and the man coughed. And this woman was almost about to hit this man. She was about to hit this man because of the fear taking us back to fear, that caused her to think that, he would give her this virus because he coughed, and that fear, going back to that and recognizing how that also leads to this division. You don't want to be by people. You don't want to be close to people. And then even if people have a difference in opinion, then you're fighting amongst each other. You're arguing amongst each other. You're fighting amongst each other. You're othering people. Everyone is othering others. And so things get divided more and more, and it really can provide a way for systems to get a handle of control over people. We have to be able to recognize that people are going to have differences in opinion. And even in this situation, I understand that it's a little different in some ways, because some people are voting for what seems to be humanity for the sake of humanity. And other people are voting for whatever the sake it is that they feel they're voting for. But when you even think about this, for some people, and right now I'm really talking about Black people, you might have people in your family, I know I do, who voted different than I did. And I remember the day of the election, this person called me, or the day after the election, this person called me, and I didn't pick up, because I knew at that moment it wasn't the time for me. And I know for a fact in my mind, my goal, and us as Black people especially, I don't want to be falling out with my family who has so much more, we have so much more to us than this election. Some people are voting from a different stance, if it's religious, what have you, even if if I feel they're being dismayed or being disillusioned. In terms of my family, I don't want to have a falling out with my family and have that level of division because of this system. When it comes to other races, or I remember I was in a line voting and there was a white guy in front of me and we were talking, and he was talking about how his whole family was voting for Trump and he was against that and he was really hurt about that. So I don't, the dynamic might be different in that situation, because he really felt like he also didn't want to deal with his family anymore. I think what I would want to say is we are in this space of love, to really put our focus of being in this space of love so that it could keep us from being divided. Now, people who aren't in a space of love, that's, then those relationships, if we're really in a space of love, they may not fit, right? They may not fit. But what I'm talking about, to be a bit more specific, is within this space of, let's just say in this space of Black people right now. What I've been hearing lately is women coming on and saying, women is just us. Because there have been some statistics that show that some Black men voted for Donald Trump, or, and this goes in other ways. It was all these statistics that showed, by race who voted and by sex and gender who voted. And I've been seeing some Black women coming on to these social media posts saying, women is just us. And it's like, this is already starting. This idea that women or Black men don't support Black women is such an illusion. It's so false. And we have to be careful to start generalizing, because you see some statistics that it puts now everyone in that boat. I don't remember what the statistics were, but it wasn't 100% of Black men voting against this idea of Kamala being president. But it was a percentage. So percentage means it's not the whole. So to start coming on to spaces and, making these statements of women being by themselves or Black women is just us is so false. And we should take this opportunity to recognize how the oppressor uses division to divide and conquer. What is important in these moments is to see, especially within your community, how are we the same? Or let me focus on the people who did vote in this way that you see for humanity. And beyond that is, let's take our vision beyond these politics and just cultivate ourselves to offer good to the world and see who sticks around for that. It also has to be beyond politics, I guess is what I'm saying, because that's still dividing. That's still dividing. And at the end of the day, there are some people who, in this whole idea of voting, were voting because they want to see people oppressed. There are people who voted based off of that. There are some people who voted because they thought the way that they were voting was to, in a spiritual way, bring about more good. So in religion, for some people, they voted a certain way that they thought was for the betterment of the world. And that's their belief system. What I'm saying is, at this point, to now be divided based off of that is going to be harmful in the long run. I'm not talking about people who voted because they want to see oppression. That's a whole different can of worms. But there are people in your family, particularly, especially Black people, who may have voted in a way that seems like it's against humanity. And these are people who could have just been also the wool placed over their eyes, because that's a part of systemic oppression. In other spaces, they can control you by guilt, you know what I mean, or shame, or religion. They can sway you to do something based off of that. So just understand all these ways that outside of us, people and systems can put about emotions that cause you to feel a certain way, that controls your next move. That's why all of this comes back to you going within yourself and developing yourself to a higher version of you that doesn't so easily respond to fear or hopelessness. And when it comes to anger, you use that energy to help develop yourself to be a better version of you. That's what I want to share. Let me know in the comments how you feel. And I also want to offer something that I've worked on that I think is perfect timing for right now, when people can be feeling fearful and hopeless and angry, to use this to go within yourself, to develop more, to become a stronger version of yourself. And that is my Inner Balance 21-day meditation series. I'll have the link in the description. But this is something that you can take with you wherever you go, to remind you of who you are and where you can utilize your power and where to look to, and to put your focus there. So it keeps you from looking to these systems that, can allure you to believe what they want you to believe and do what they want you to do. So that is my message to you today. I hope that this is helpful, and I will be back continuing to bring this spirit of love so that we can really empower our mental well-being and our holistic well-being in this world that we're in today. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.